What is good, guys? It is Reed and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different, something pretty interesting that was inspired by my good friend Sean Devine. Now Sean recently put out a video on 3 tips for creating magic, his 3 tips, and that is a fantastic video. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go check it out. I will link it down below. But I thought it was a great video and a great idea, and I thought the concept was something that you guys might benefit from me chiming in on and giving you my 3 tips on creating magic. So I came up with 3 things different to Sean's, and I'm going to share those with you guys today. As you can see, we got another new setup here, moved once again. Being in university, moving around all the time. So anyway, this will be the next temporary setup until hopefully near the summer of this year, we should have something a little bit more permanent that I can actually set up as a nice little studio. Anyway, so this video, 3 of my tips on how to create magic. I love to create, I'm always creating, and so I thought you guys could benefit with my thought process and how I go through the creative process. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you click that sub button. It really helps out the channel and I really appreciate it. Drop this video a like and a comment and let's get into it. So my first tip is to learn everything you can. Now this is similar to something Sean said, and he was very adamant on it being in books, and I definitely agree with that, and I am saying this to reiterate that point. But I also wanted to raise the point of why I think it's important and other mediums as well. I do think consuming as much as you can in video as well applies to the book theory. So for example, I follow a ton of different magic YouTubers, and each day a few of them are putting out a video. And anything that is tutorial, whether it's a trick, a sleight, whatever, I will always make an effort to try to watch that. 1, I enjoy the creators, I want to support them, but 2, you'll be surprised at how many little gems you find in the videos that you least expect it, right? Someone's teaching the biddle trick for the 500th time on YouTube, and you watch that video and there's something in there that, just that little thing that is great, that is key, that is really awesome. Obviously you don't have to watch every second of the video, you know how it works, you have better things to do, but if you can just watch a good portion of the video, typically the before and the after aspects, you can find a lot of gems, people's different handlings and different ideas, and sometimes people put out real gold in those kind of simpler videos. I would really recommend you try to digest, or just get your eyes on it, and you just seeing it or even hearing it subconsciously, that information will be stored, and one day you might be able to come back to that and actually use these small little ideas that can be super beneficial. So obviously this is the same in books. If you can, read all your books. I'm also guilty of not reading every book that I own. I'm still working on that, and I love reading books like Expert Card Technique. And yeah, I might know a lot of the stuff in there, or some of it I can already do, but even rereading those sections, you'll always pick up on little tips, and that can be really helpful in creating magic. Once you build up that database of information and skill and techniques, you can virtually do whatever you want to do. So I think that's really important. I just wanted to kind of reiterate that point and give my 2 cents on learning as much as you can, because it really does help you. And my big point to stress is that you are not too good for any video. Watch any video by creators that you respect, trust, like their content, even if you know the trick they're teaching or whatever. Watch it, you will always pick up on something gold, because the people who are really good at this are going to be leaving the gold in there for you. Now I'm going to give these tips in sort of a process. So tip 1 is about getting your database of information. Now tip 2 is going to be on how you get your inspiration to create effects. A lot of people ask, how do you get creativity, inspiration? How do you become creative? And here's my tips on that. The second tip is to get inspiration from everything you can, right? Whether that be inside or outside of magic. Now, outside of magic is very broad, and it's difficult for me to give you tips on that, but you can use things in your everyday life to work into your effects. And I believe I talk about this more in depth in my routine building video from the How to Make Your Magic Better series, so I will link that above. I'm going to talk about more in magic where you can get this inspiration from. Now, I told a little story in my recent video about how, as a creative, when the new year rolls around, you tend to feel this sense of kind of, what am I going to do next? There's so much that you've created in that past year, and you reflect on that all in the new year. So much of it is so good, right? Not all of it, but a lot of it's good, and I definitely experienced this. I created so many great things this year, and it's like, what am I going to create next? I have no ideas, right? But if you just trust the process, as you gain more information, as you go through your life, more things will inspire you, and you'll create a bunch of new things, right? That's kind of the daunting feeling at the end of the new year for creative people. You have no idea what's going to come next, but then at the end of the year, you always reflect and you created a bunch of new great things in that year. And the first month of this year, I've already created some new ideas that are awesome. So now this point does tie into the first point, because the more you expose yourself to, the more sources of inspiration you can draw from. Now, the first thing you can get inspiration from is other effects, of course. Sometimes you'll see another effect and it can just be as simple as you can't do a move that's in that effect, or you don't like a move that's in that effect, or you want to adapt it to whatever else, and you can take that as your source of inspiration. One of my favorite things of all time to create is taking gimmicked effects or effects that are not impromptu and turning them into impromptu effects. That's one thing I love to do, and I've shared a few of those with you guys, and I have a couple more bangers that I'm going to share with you guys soon, including my impromptu wave handling, which is super dope. So getting inspired from other effects is a great way. Just watching other people's performances and gaining inspiration, like, hey, that's a neat idea, let me see how I can adapt that to fit me. And that's kind of segueing into the next thing. You know, create things that are going to be good for you if that's what you want ultimately, right? If you're a street performer, or you don't do a lot of mem deck work, or you don't like gimmick decks, whatever, you'll create the stuff that you want to create that suits you, and that can be a source of inspiration. You find something that doesn't suit you, something, say for me, that uses a gimmick deck, I will take that and create a way to do it without that gimmick deck, and that is a source of inspiration. So that's sort of the idea of adapting effects, right? You can adapt effects in all kinds of different ways. Another thing I love to do is modernize effects. So particularly in mentalism, old school effects that were all billet work, I try to modernize them to be used on a phone, say, for example. Another point is you can look at the methods. Methods are a great way to gain inspiration. Sometimes you will be inspired by an incredible method. A good example would be Penelope's synchrony, a trick that I recently taught, where it was totally inspired by Alex Almbley's Penelope principle. I read that and I said, I need an effect that uses this principle. And that's the effect I came up with, right? So it was totally just birthed from the method. So sometimes it will be method first, sometimes it'll be effect first, but it depends. The inspiration can come from either, so don't discount either. And to tie up that little thought, the effect can also be a place to start, and probably I would say the better place to start. Let's say in mentalism you want to figure out a way to divine a food item that someone's thinking of, right? That's the effect, that's where you start. Different effects that you guys have seen me perform on the channel, like my routine called a character, where the person creates a random phone number and then another person thinks of a name, and then they look up that phone number in their phone and that number matches the name. You would have seen that in one of my street magic videos. That was an effect that I had the effect originally, and I said, you know, I want to create this fictional character, I want them to think of a name, a trait, and then we'll create a phone number, and then at the end it ties up all nicely because it was actually a contact that they have in their phone the entire time from the very beginning. How do I make that happen? So you start with the effect and then you work on the method. So that's typically the more conventional way that I do recommend more, but that shouldn't stop you from a method being your source of inspiration. And of course, another little option is plots, right? I highly recommend everyone creates their own triumph version, their own any card, any number, their own ambitious card, some of the classic card magic plots. Go and just create your own. Maybe you won't use them, maybe they won't be as good as some of the other ones, and they won't be ones you perform, but just that exercise is super useful, and you'll never know what you'll come up with. And the triumph I use, the any card, any number I use, and the ambitious card I use are all effects that I have created, mine. Just, you know, they might take ideas from other people, but doing that is very advantageous. I think everyone should take some time with the classics and create their own versions of it. Now, my third tip is gonna be sort of process, right? We've talked about how to get your information, how to now get the inspiration, and now we have that inspiration, we have the information. How do we sit down? How do we do the process? So I'm going to give you a very analytical step-by-step sort of process how I go through it. Like Sean said in his video, you know, it's essentially problem solving. So here's how I go about my problem solving. Here's my process. Step one, you need to define your restrictions. So for example, if we have a card trick, you know, do we want them to be able to handle the cards? Do we want there to be a palm involved? No palm involved? Do we want it to be mem deck, impromptu? And then we can start to look at the plot. Do we want it to be a triumph, an any card, any number? If it's an any card, any number, does it have to be actually any number? Do I need it to be any card? These are all decisions you can make. And now you start to apply your restrictions. And what your restrictions will do is force you into the direction of the method that you need to use. And I'll give an example of this at the end once I finish up here. This next step, after you define your restrictions, kind of like I said, you're going to narrow down based on those restrictions the methods that you can possibly use. Okay, so of course the restrictions are going to put you in a box of certain methods, and you're immediately going to be able to discount methods in your head because they don't fit the restriction you want. Be careful, because sometimes you can adapt methods to fit the restriction. So you don't want to just discount everything instantly, but take a second to think about it. But this is the next step, and then you'll narrow it down to a couple different methods, and you'll figure out which one's the best one, typically based on those restrictions. Maybe you combine a few. And obviously you start with the core method, the main thing that's going to make it work, and then if you need a control here or a palm here, you kind of work those in afterwards. But start with the main method. How am I going to get that card at that number, for example? And then you work backwards. How do I figure out the card? And then how do I get control of it and stuff like that. So then at this point you want to iterate. Now iterating is a process of going through creating your whole effect and then starting back to the beginning and making a change, right? So you have a couple different methods. You think you've worked it out, you try it out, maybe you try it out on a spectator or you just try it out to yourself. Then you realize that something doesn't work, so you make a small tweak. Now you go back to the beginning, you try it again, you see how it works. So tweaking, right, iterating that effect to get it better, testing it out. I think it's really important that you do actually test it on real people before you know, really, whether before I teach it, I'm going to test it, make sure it works. And you'll learn so much from testing on real people, things you never would have thought about. And then you go back to the drawing board, you reiterate some of the points, you go back through it again, and you end up with your method. Now I want to just give you guys a quick example of that process on an effect that I have already taught you guys called So I Can, sleight of hand, any card, any number. Something that I have taught that I use all the time that I absolutely love. And it's something I created, and I just wanted to walk you through how I applied that process, these steps to that. First things first, I have my base of knowledge, and the inspiration came simply as a desire for me to have an extremely practical any card, any number that's impromptu, right? Doesn't use any shuffled decks, no complicated this or that. Only sleight of hand, right? I want it to work all the time, a lot of it be in my control, so I don't have that risk of the spectator screwing something up, stuff like that. So my restrictions now, I defined them. I wanted it to be any card and any number. I wanted the spectator to do the dealing, and I wanted them to do the shuffling. Originally, I didn't want there to be a palm, but as I worked through it, I decided that was going to be the method I used, and I removed that. So you can kind of play with these, right? So first things first, I start to think about how can I get access if they name any card? Well, I ended up settling with the sort of open index cull idea where I hand them the deck, let them shuffle it. So now this is taking care of the shuffling requirement. So they're going to shuffle, now I get it back, and it was just as simple as finding a justification for why I would spread through the deck to be able to call their card out. Now I didn't want to do the whole, do it quickly before they notice all these cards are different. So then I went to scripting. How can I script this? And the scripting that I thought would make sense after some time thinking about it was I'm showing them to help them, right? They're the ones who are going to try to guess where their card is, so let me help them. Now I have a nice justification for the call. Then I thought, well, I could just go straight into it, but I do like the moment where they shuffle and essentially go right into the dealing. So then I thought, okay, I could do a palm here, have them shuffle it, but then the problem was, why would they shuffle it when they just shuffled it? So then again, fitting in with the script, it was, okay, well, I hand them the deck because now that I've given them a hint, it's not as magical, so, I changed my mind. Let's make it really magical. You shuffle it. We'll do this again. Now I can just take the deck back, load it, and again, acting like I didn't mean to take the deck back, right? This all the little subtleties. I just gesture my hand out, they put it in my hand, and then I say, oh no, I didn't want to hold on to that. That's when I do the load, hand them the deck, and now the card is on top. And then it came to, how do I get the card to that number? And now there were a few things I could do. I could stack it to that position, but obviously, that's gonna take some math or some kind of me shuffling it. And I wanted this to be really clean, where they just shuffle and then deal. So then I'm like, okay, it's probably gonna come to a bit of sleight of hand, some kind of shift. And that's when I, thought about, oh, well, if it's on top, they'll always deal it into my hand no matter what. I'll always know it's on the bottom. And then it was just about working out a shift that was super clean, right? I didn't want to have any of this sort of passing motion or where I'm like being really sneaky. So I just thought of the idea eventually I just played around. Eventually I realized I can keep the top card in view the whole time. You guys know the method, but if I just keep the card offset and I can hold it like this, they see that top card the whole time, and at the last second I drop that card on top as well. It looks very congruent, very deceptive. Then I just needed a reason. Why am I dribbling the cards like this? So I came up with, you know, how many cards is this? I wasn't counting, so this should be 16 cards or whatever, right? And then they flip it, and that's the any card, any number. So you see how I kind of worked through this process. There were a lot of tweaks. Like I said, there didn't used to be a palm, so then I went back to the beginning. Then I said, okay, I need there to be a palm so that this can happen, and we worked through it. So that's sort of the idea of the process here. Now, I am gonna make another video very soon about creating magic with me. I'm gonna actually have a plot in mind and an idea, and I'm not going to cheat. I have no idea what the method's going to be, how we're going to do this. I'm just going to start filming, and we're going to try to create an awesome effect that was inspired by another video of Sean's. He gives me all kinds of inspiration, but he did a really cool do as I do, any card, any number effect using a Svengali deck. So take a guess, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it without a Svengali deck. So join me for that in a few weeks. I will get that done, and hopefully, no promises, because I honestly don't know where this is going to end up. The trick might suck, might be a throwaway, but hopefully we create something pretty awesome. Now guys, if you made it this far, I want to share something pretty cool with you guys. A new little idea, sort of half-baked, but it's pretty much fleshed out. I just don't know where it's going to be used in a routine, but it's a pretty cool way to determine a thought of card from someone's mind that's very fair, very fooling, very justified, and if you made it this far, I just want to share it with you guys. I was planning on releasing it in another video, but it needs more time to figure out where it works and what kind of routine. Right now it's just a very basic routine, but I think I can take it further than that. So I'm just going to show you guys the basic principle and the mechanics, and then let you guys have fun with it if you stayed this far. This is something I call the weighted average principle. It's a way to determine a thought of card from someone's mind. It's pretty awesome. So let's just get right into it. All right, guys, so the weighted average principle, essentially the very basic idea of the weighted average principle at its most basic level foundation, without any of the hidden ideas, would be you have someone think of a card completely independently of the deck, any card they want. Then they'd go through, pull out that card, and essentially show it to you, right? And so you'd know what card it is. Now, of course, that's not deceptive at all. This is essentially the idea, right? It's a way of getting them to actually grab the card they're thinking of and put it somewhere in the deck that we can, you know, peek it at some point. The first ideas I had were, you know, getting them to just put their card on top, and then you can do a bubble peek or whatever, but all of those ideas were too obvious. This really needs to feel like a thought of card. Everything needs to be totally wrapped up, justified. You know, if they really just thought of a card and I could just mind read it, why would they need to look at it in the deck? So all these ideas needed to be thought of. Obviously, they're not just going to show me the card like this either. So there's a lot of little ideas, a lot of subtleties into this. And this definitely had a ton of iterations as I went through the process. You know, originally it was on top, you do a peek, all these kind of things, but it's much more deceptive now where it is. So here's the weighted average principle and all of the good subtleties that go along with it. Now, first things first, I think this is best used as a precursor to an effect, right? To get the identity of a thought of card, and then you move into another effect and you kind of forget the whole weighted average procedure. Right now, the routine I use it with is simply just a thought of card, right? And I just reveal it. That's kind of how I've been using it lately, and it's awesome. It kills. No one ever catches it. So here's the idea. So first things first, you want to have the deck of cards out of play, right? It's not really an important factor when you get them to think of their card, right? So even have it in the box in your pocket is great to start. Now, if you already have the deck out, I'd kind of set it aside and just, you know, look at them and say, I want you to think of any playing card you want. Now, don't make it an easy one like the Ace of Spades, for example, but absolutely any card you want. Take your time, think about it, change your mind a few times, and make a decision, right? That's, you know, whatever scripting you want to use. You don't have to eliminate the Ace of Spades if you don't want, but I just choose to say that. I feel like it makes it a bit more fair. Now, you go and once they've settled on a card, you want to tell them, well, commit it to memory, do not forget it, and we'll stick with that one, just so they don't change their mind later on. Now, when they have that, you say, in order to get into your mind, right, we have so many thoughts, thousands of thoughts every second. I need you to have a clear idea of your card, a clear image of that card in your mind. So I need you to be able to visualize it. So here's what I want you to do. Now you take the deck and you demonstrate what you want them to do. So you say, I want you to go through the cards like this and just keep placing packets of cards face down onto the table until you arrive at your card. Once you've arrived at it, I want you to hold the cards against your chest just like this, okay? With your card on the face so that you can see it. Makes sense, right? So that's what you tell them. So of course, you can hand them the deck at this point. You say, give it a good shuffle, so I can't know the order of any of the cards. Then you turn around. This is very important. At this point, you're going to turn around and you say, all right, go through, leaving packets on the table until you arrive at your cards. So let's say for this example, they're thinking of the Six of Spades. So your back is turned, and now they're going through the cards, and eventually they're going to arrive at the 6 of spades, and they're going to stop here, and then you remind them and just hold it against your chest when you're done. So now they've done this. Now with our back turned, we want to remain congruent. So what we say is, now just take a look at that card. All right, get it into your mind, visualize it, focus on it, and really burn that image into your mind. So now while you're turned away, they're going to do this. They're going to look at it, burn it into your mind, and then you say, all right, hold it against your chest. They'll do that, and now this is the point where you turn around. So let's imagine they're holding this over by their chest. So now we're going to do a little process that might not be super justified at first, but we're going to tie it up and justify it after they do it. So you turn back around, those cards are against their chests, so there's no way you can see. Now you pick up the deck at a random point. The reason I like to do this is so there's no way you could know that bottom card, or whatever, you just don't want to eliminate any sort of suspicion. So I just kind of pick up a random packet and I say, now look, if your card was a 2, this is what I want you to do. I just want you to count the number of cards that matches your value. So 1, 2, you're going to take the rest and you're going to set them down on top. Make sense? If the card was a 9, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you set the rest on top. Does that make sense? And you just throw whatever you want on top, it doesn't matter. Now, you turn back around, and you say, all right, go ahead, count that number of cards, and they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it's important that you demonstrate it so that they do it properly, and then you tell them and put the rest of the cards on top of the deck, and now hold those close to you. Now at this point, to confirm that they're in the right position with their card on the face, you say, so you can still see your card, right? Take a look at it, you can still see it. They'll confirm, and you say, all right, visualize it, focus on it. One last time, get that in your mind. Then you say something interesting. You say, I want you to try this. It's a little bit strange, but I actually find I can get a good sense of people if they know the weight associated with their numbers, right? So I want you to just feel how heavy that amount of cards is in your hand. Just feel, get a sense for the weight of it, just kind of feel it. So now, presumably they're going to be doing something like this, kind of feeling the weight of that number of cards. Now you just say, and throw that on top. And they do. So if you've been following along, we actually don't really know anything about this deck or what their card is because there were no key cards involved. The deck was shuffled the whole time. So there's no way that we could know anything because they shuffled the deck before we started this process. So that is important to make sure they shuffle it beforehand. Now the very interesting thing, and the thing we do know, is that their card is at the same position from the top as the value of the card. So pretty neat. So now what we do is, you tell them to square it up and everything and make sure there's no way I could know. They'll agree, you turn around, and now you have this deck looking like this. They have a card in mind, and it is very fairly buried into the deck. Now you say, all right, I'm going to try something fairly interesting, like I said. It helps me if you have a sense of the weight of that number of cards. So I want to test something out here. You pick up the deck and you say, hold out your hand for me, and then you say, I'm going to deal some cards into your hand like that. Now it's important when you do this, you just deal one card because we don't want to switch the order, right? In case, there you go, there's an ace right there. But you don't want to switch the order, so you deal one card into their hand, and you say, I'm just going to deal cards into your hand like this, and I want you to just think stop when the weight feels the same as the number of cards you felt before. Right, so now it ties up the plot really fairly, everything's very justified, and it makes sense to them. And you also have said, if you realized, I want you to close your eyes, because in their mind this is going to enhance their ability to feel, but it's really going to serve a very sneaky purpose. And now the point of putting this card face down is a very nice subtlety, because when we deal it, we're actually going to be dealing him face up. Now if you think about this, their eyes are going to be closed, so they'll never have any idea. And if there's other people watching, it's not really going to be a moment that matters very much, so it's kind of important. But in one-on-one situation, this is very, very deceptive. So you deal one card into their hand, you say, now we're going to go through the cards, I'm going to deal them into your hand like this, and I just want you to think stop when it feels like the same number of cards are in your hand. They'll say, okay. Take that card back and you say, all right, close your eyes and I'll start. Now in their hand, you start dealing cards. You're going to start remembering cards that have the same value as position that they're at. So in your head, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You remember 6 of spades and 6. So that could be their card. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And there you go. You know it's a 6 of spades. It's the only card that was in that position. Now, with their eyes closed, you're going to say, I'm going to assume you've probably felt it by now. The same weight. You've probably thought stop. And they will confirm. You take the deck back, you throw it on top. You can give it a shuffle if you want at this point. And now you know the identity of the card. You have them open their eyes. And to them, they never even saw you look at the faces of the card. Because of that subtlety, they assumed that you were dealing the cards face down. So now you know their card and you're good to go. You can do whatever you want. You can go and just reveal the card in whichever way you want. Now, a few problems that you might be thinking, of course, are what if there's more than one card that corresponds? And in my practice with this, I'd say it's about 50-50, it seems, whether you'll get one or two that match, and very rarely you will get three. So I'll just shuffle. Let's see if we get any here. 1, 2. So 2 of hearts, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King. So as you saw, in that case, it would be the 2 of hearts. But if we're thinking about this in the routine, the 2 of hearts was by chance. So it'd be 2 of hearts plus whatever their card happened to be, right? So in that case, we need to remember those two. What I do is I just remember them both. So let's say 2 of hearts, and it was maybe, imagine it was the 8 of clubs. Now I'd throw out a simple fishing question, but I'm going to tell them rather than ask. So I'm going to say, your card was a red card, wasn't it? At this point, they're going to confirm yes or no. If it's a yes, it's great because I was telling them, so it feels like mind reading and not questioning. If it's wrong, it just feels like I missed, which is okay because now they believe that we're not even close to the card, right? We're so far off that there's no way we're going to get it, so when we actually do get it, it hits a little bit harder. So that's how you can kind of use the miscall to your advantage. If there's more than 3 cards, you just kind of fish, you just kind of wing it. You could say, this is a picture card, isn't it? Or you could say it's a red card, or you could say it's a diamond or a spade. And if there's 3 cards, obviously you might have to do 2 levels of fishing. But in this case, for example, let's say we got this, they're all red. I would start by saying it's a heart, isn't it? Because there's a more likely chance that I'll get the yes on the heart. But if I get the no, I instantly know what card it is, right? Whereas if I said diamond and I get a no, then I'm gonna have to fish again where I could get a second no. But if I name the one that has the more likelihood first, then it's gonna work out, right? So if I said hearts and they say no, well, I know it's diamonds. If they say yes, then it's okay, and I haven't had a miss yet, so I'm okay to, possibly get another miss on this time, and I'd say, this is a very low card, isn't it? They'd say no, now I know it's the 9 of hearts. So you just have to kind of remember this in your head. If you're worried about remembering, you can just keep the cards in order, right? So let's say there's 3 cards you have to remember, and you've forgotten them. You leave the deck in order, and you say, just focus on it for me, send it to me. I'm just gonna get a sense for one of these. Now you go through, and you can remember the identity of those cards and complete your fishing. So quickly to run through that process, they think of a card, shuffle the deck, then you explain to them, you demonstrate, you want them to go through the deck like this until they see the card that is theirs, and then you're going to have them focus on it. So with your back turned, they do this. Let's say they were thinking of the 4 of spades, they stop here, and you say, focus on that card, I want you to visualize it, commit it to memory. Then you say, hold it against your chest. While they're doing that, you turn back around, you pick up somewhere, and you say, now let's say your card was a 7. What I want you to do is just count that number of cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anything you have left, you'll put on top of the deck, okay? And you're just gonna hold these in a packet once again. Put those down. Now they do that, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very important you demonstrate all this because otherwise it could get a bit confusing. They throw the rest on top. Then you say, I want you to focus on your card one last time, visualize it, commit it to memory. That'll confirm that their card is the one on the face. Then you say, I want you to feel the weight of those cards, just get a sense of how heavy they are. Throw everything on top, square it up, you turn back around. Now you say, I want to test you, I want to see if you have a good sense of that weight. It's going to help me kind of get into your mind here. You have a sense of the weight. That's actually a strange technique, but it does help me get into your mind. So I'm going to start dealing cards like this, and I just want you to think stop when you feel like we've hit that number of cards, when the number feels the same, the weight, right? So now you do it face up. 1, 2, 3, 4. I remember 4 spades. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Jack, Queen, King. I know it's the 4 of spades. And now I can do whatever I want. I pick up those cards, square up the deck, give it a shuffle. I can do the fishing questions if there's more than one card. But now I instantly know what card they're thinking of. Now, hopefully this doesn't seem too process heavy because I can assure you it isn't. When I actually decide to fully teach this in its own tutorial, I will show you guys some performances, of course. But it's a really neat principle, really cool. And the justification again is, once they've thought of it, we need something to really get into their mind. We need them to clear their mind and focus on this one thing, so we want them to visualize it. That's why they get the card to this point. And then you explain the next instruction, they do it, and now you say, the reason I had you do that is because I want you to feel the weight of what that number of cards feels like. I know it sounds strange, but that sensation, linking the feeling to the weight and the thought to the weight can actually really help me get into your mind and figure out what that is. So they'll do that, they put it on top. Now you say, I just want you to think stop, and I'm going to try to get a sense for what you're thinking here. And when you feel that weight is the same, they close their eyes, you go through, that's when you get your peak and you're good to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed weighted average, a little principle to get a thought of card out of anyone's mind anytime, anywhere with a shuffled deck. So guys, that was my 3 tips on creating magic and a little bonus tutorial if you stick around to the end. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun. Let me know if you'd like more kind of theory videos like this. A couple pretty cool videos in the works, some new series as well perhaps. And then of course we got some more tutorials coming. Next video should be the propless version, fully propless version of Traveler, which is super awesome and you're not going to want to miss that. And with all that said guys, thanks so much. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video.